This week on the Authentic Media Podcast.
When you are walking in your purpose, opportunities are going to line up for you in the way that they need to allow you to do the work you're supposed to do.
The first African-American superintendent in Topeka, Kansas.
Without a first, you can't have a second and you can't have a third. And so I feel a tremendous amount of responsibility to not only do my part, but to lift as I climb. Be who you are. Don't let your parents or others tell you who you should be or how you should look or how you should change to fit a mold to fit in with the crowd or other people.
What does authenticity mean? Welcome, everyone, to Authentic Media Podcast. We are doing a special series honoring leaders in the community here. And so for Black History Month, I'm super excited to welcome Dr. Tiffany Anderson, also known as the first African-American superintendent in Topeka, Kansas. And so, Dr. Anderson, I wanted to have you here because I've talked with you multiple times, and I think that people know the leadership style of you and know the superintendent side. But I think as a Black woman, you speak to a lot of young women and how you carry yourself. Everything about you is so prestigious and admiring. And I want to really use this opportunity to have you tell your story and really speak to the young women and business owners, entrepreneurs who are in the space of creating an authentic brand. And so this podcast is all about that. And so, of course, I know in some way you are a business owner. You have your own book. You have a lot of accolades behind your name. But one of the things I know you can speak to is the leadership style of building a brand in the community as a leader, as a female, as a woman. And so first, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me and for taking the time to really delve into the subject of branding, especially for Black women. It's powerful and it's an honor to be here.
Thank you. So let's start a little bit about your personal journey into becoming the first African-American female superintendent in Topeka, Kansas. When you hear that statement, what does that mean to you?
Oh my goodness. Well, and so Topeka has had an African-American superintendent, but not an African-American woman. And, we're talking in the year 2000 when I'm one of two Black women in the entire state of Kansas as a superintendent. So as a female superintendent. And that statement is so powerful because it shows possibility, shows opportunity. We know that we cannot walk into spaces that people haven't already walked into in some fashion. And so, without a first, you can't have a second and you can't have a third. And so it really speaks about responsibility. So I feel a tremendous amount of responsibility to not only do my part, but to lift as I climb and to open doors that perhaps would not have been opened before me or if I hadn't gotten the opportunity to be in this space. The other powerful piece is there was a Black woman on the school board when I was hired. So that's also a powerful statement to say, we all have this responsibility. So it is a statement that brings me tremendous joy, but also reminds me of the responsibility that I have.
I want to dive into your perspective around authenticity. One of the things I admire about you as a leader is that you're very authentic in your leadership. You're very open and straightforward when it comes to your faith. And so I think a lot of people in leadership tend to maybe hide parts of themselves, but you tend to be very straightforward with who you are personally, and it shows up in your leadership. So for you, what does authenticity mean, and how do you bring that into your everyday lifestyle?
Well, one thing that I'll share with you, I'm a bit of a storyteller, and I'll be very brief in sharing the story, but it gives examples, and I'm an educator. So in really looking at who you are and bringing your best self forward and not changing who you are for anyone, I'm reminded of attending the Oscars. Now, I'm not a big TV watcher, so I received a call. This was back in I think maybe 15 or 16, about receiving the People with Purpose Award. And I said, I don't need someone to tell me that I have purpose. I know I have purpose. What kind of award is that?
Yeah.
So it was the PwC who selects who will be, who really organizes and selects who will be getting the awards at the Oscars, or at least they organize the process. Yeah. And so they shared, you'd come to the Oscars, you'd come down the red carpet, you hear all the pieces with that. So that's ridiculous. And I went home and told my husband, and I said, so the Oscars, which show is that? He said, well, that's where you would meet Denzel Washington. I said, baby, I'm going to the Oscars. So he immediately changed, decided to go.
Yes.
And my mom and several other people said, do not wear tennis shoes. Mm-hmm. So tennis shoes has been a bit of the brand of the boots to the ground or sneakers to the ground philosophy. And I talk about it in my latest book about what that means. And so my mom said, you have this beautiful ballroom dress, and please don't wear tennis shoes. Don't they pay you enough to get, heels? And so I buy the heels, I get there. And when you get to the Oscars, they have a room of someone that does your makeup, and a room where they do a space where they do your hair, and all these other things. And so I went on the red carpet, and what do you think the first question they asked me when
I was... What are you wearing?
Yeah. I had my heels on, and they asked, where are your tennis shoes? I went back to the hotel, changed the shoes, went back to the location to walk the red carpet. And it was my reminder, be who you are. Don't let your parents or others tell you who you should be or how you should look, or how you should change to fit a mold to fit in with the crowd or other people. It was that reminder. In fact, they were looking for me to come as my authentic self. And that would be a dress or suit in tennis shoes. And it would be the boots to the ground that I bring to the space. And so truly being authentic means first you have to know who you are and to be able to stand on that and what you believe. And then walking into that space. So for me, I have the privilege of doing that every day and modeling that for others and highlighting it as I see it in others, leaders, students. It's truly a beautiful opportunity to be the light of Christ in all of the spaces, to say, you are beautiful and amazing because you're here. You belong because you're here. And to encourage people to feel that light and also be who they were intended to be and live out their purpose, not someone else's.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, and I'm glad you brought up the tennis shoes, because it is your brand, essentially. Like, everything about you is so just immaculate. But one of the things I want to point out for those who may not be aware of who you are here, but so Dr. Anderson wears white tennis shoes every single day, which is like a surprise to many because, in the American traditional sense, right, like they expect a female to come to work with heels on. And so I'm curious why you decided to kind of like embrace that and say, I'm going to switch things up a little bit, share a little bit about why that is now a part of your brand.
Well, and it's so funny because when I started in Topeka, it was such an unusual thing that, one of the men superintendents at the Capitol, we were preparing to present, and he said, don't you need some different shoes? As he was looking at my tennis shoes. And so I couldn't wait to present, because that was the first statement I said was, hey, this superintendent made this comment, and I'm so glad he did, because I want to let you know what being a person that believes in boots to the ground, or in my case, sneakers to the ground, means. And that just led right into who we are in Topeka Public Schools and what we need from them. So I have always worn tennis shoes as long as I can remember. As a teacher, I wore a suit or a dress to school with tennis shoes. And it really, for me, was about comfort. It also was about, I can't do this working heels. There's actually a little graphic kind of commercial thing from one of the leadership organizations, ASCD, on the tennis shoes. Can you believe that? And they taped me talking about why I wear the tennis shoes. But that sneakers to the ground philosophy is really about being in the community, knowing that we can't do this work alone, and you need everyone around you to really uplift the good work that you're supposed to do. And so in doing that, for me, it requires walking in the community, knocking on doors, truly being someone that connects with people beyond the office. So for me, it's about comfort. It really started as a teacher with comfort, but it also talks about not being afraid to look different And so it embodies all of that.
Yeah.
And so for me, also the tennis shoes really allows me to be flexible. There are some things I seriously cannot do in heels, such as get on a playground and, double dutch at a elementary school, or run up or down the stairs when needed to address an immediate situation at Topeka High that has, multiple flights of stairs. And but not being afraid to be the person that you need to be to do the job at hand that you're given to do.
Yeah. One of the things, too, about you is you're very personal in your role when it comes to being a superintendent. I think majority of the time, many of us are used to a superintendent being behind closed doors, being in the office, not being as like face-to-face with the students. But in your role, I always constantly see you out in the community, out at different schools, like building personal relationships, going on field trips with the students, and, introducing yourself and letting not only the people who are hosting, but the students know that like I care about what you're learning and what you're doing. And I think that speaks to who you are as a person, but also it just kind of communicates another piece of your character when it comes to showing up for your students. And so I'm just curious, like, what makes you go the extra mile besides just doing the paperwork? You're like, I want to be there with the student. What does that mean to you?
Well, first of all, thank you for saying all of that. The first thing, it's important to know we can't serve needs we don't know. And so we have the privilege to share the space with other people that I believe God has placed in the space that I, encounter every day, whether it's in a school or at a supermarket or just meeting a parent when I am going from one place to the next and I happen to bump into a parent who has this critical need and we're at the right time at the right place, or a teacher.
Right.
And as I'm in these spaces, I can't serve the needs that I don't know. Therefore, I am expected to take the time to listen, to connect. We have something called listening tours, and we started those in part because we talk about listening in such a way that sometimes people think listening means you need to listen to respond. And while response may be needed, I believe you have to listen to learn. And you can't respond until you learn. So the listening tours are really about learning. I need to learn more about what do you expect and what do you need and what are you not saying with words that you're trying to convey to me in person in other ways. It is an opportunity to truly understand the needs of the community. So for me, meeting people, helping people know that I'm meeting them where they are, is critical. And to do that, it requires helping people know that they belong and that they're part of the greater family that I get to be part of, which is Topeka Public Schools. So at the listening tours, I may say, hey, Mom, what happened last night in the community? Or, hey, Dad, I love that you're walking your child to school. They may see me on crossing guard duty, hugging on a student to say, man, how was that first day? I was so excited to see you yesterday, crossing guard. I'm so excited to see you today. I can't wait to hear about your day. Letting them know that you're part of a larger family. I'm part of a larger family. So that piece of being personable is just the same way that you'd be with your mom or your sister or your brother. I see every student in Topeka in that way. Imagine if everyone saw everyone else as truly their brother or sister, which truly we are all brothers and sisters in Christ, I believe. So if everyone saw everybody like that, they would probably treat them just a little different, speak to them differently. So I get a chance to model and be part of that daily.
I want you to speak to the challenges that I know there's many, because knowing who you are, right? I know you face many challenges in the school system, at home, personal, professional. But when it comes to being a leader in this community, I think there's a lot of challenges that people are not aware of. And so when they see you and they see your grace and they see your smile, you make it look easy, Dr. Anderson. Like everything that you do, it looks easy, but that comes with so many challenges. And so if you could speak to someone who's in a leadership role or who's a business owner trying to lead a team, how would you advise them to overcome challenges and moving forward with grace?
That's so great, because so much of what we do and who we are is about perspective. And knowing who you are, it's really about how you think. So the first thing is there are no barriers except your mindset. Once you know that, you have tremendous freedom. How you think changes everything. So as I think of challenges, and our team, my team, knows this in Topeka, that there are no problems, there are only opportunities, and they are uniquely designed for you. And it's true. And you are placed in that position for that opportunity. And sometimes we can complain our blessings away. That opportunity is a blessing meant for you. And there is a blessing in every challenge. If you look at them as challenges, there's a blessing in every challenge. Sometimes it's hard to see it in the moment. And any challenge that a person can see in my life and say, man, how did you address that or deal with that? I can tell you, maybe not at the present time, but later, man, here's the blessing I got out of that. So for me, seeing all things as opportunities changes how you view teams and the work. For me, I'm a CEO of a $220 million company with 13,000 students, 13,000 parents. And when you take all of those people combined, you're really talking about a small city. And in the small city that we have, we really focus on the mission of engaging, preparing, and inspiring students and staff and community members. Right now, our team, the leadership team's reading a book called The Culture Code. And it talks about 3 things that you must have in your organization to ensure that you succeed. All people want to know, they want to know, do I belong? Do I have a future here? And am I safe? So everything we do is really wrapped around belonging, safety, and letting people know they have a future here for our parents, for our students. So every initiative that you look at, whether it's the hospital at Topeka High, the food pantries that we have, the reduction in homelessness through some of the housing initiatives, do I belong? Do I have a future here, and am I safe? If you do that, that really changes how you look at leading an organization and how you foster a sense of leadership that empowers others with grace and love. How you think about every opportunity changes how you treat others, including how you problem solve opportunities. It's amazing what God can do through you if you allow it.
That's good. That's good. Let's talk about your foundational belief around education. And clearly, because you went to go obviously get your doctorate. Last time we talked, I know you were working on another book, right? So right now you're at 2 books?
And I should have brought it. I have 3 books.
3 books,
and, I don't know, several dozen articles. So the most, in fact, I do actually have it for you in the car. The most recent article was published 2 weeks ago. But the book was out in 2024, at the end of 2024, on building leadership capacity in parents.
Right. And then you were going back to school to do something with pastoring. Is that correct?
Yes. I graduated a few years ago with my MDiv, Master's in Divinity, and through the Methodist Church. In fact, I was on a podcast earlier with the bishop, actually, of the Methodist Church. But through the Methodist Church, it's a several-year process of moving from graduating with your Master's in Divinity through ordination, which is not a requirement. But for me, I believe I'm called to serve in a ministry that is beyond the traditional church context. And that really Topeka, the community of Topeka and the schools, it is my ministry. And I just seek every day to fulfill what God is directing and guiding me to do. And truly living out Scripture, and Jesus' greatest command is to love one another as we have been loved. And so, if you live that out, the school system is a perfect avenue to show love and grace and to develop that within others.
With all of the articles and books and degrees that you have. What made you say that I want to, it sounds like a silly question, but continue my education, right? And not just stop at this one degree, but you had obviously opportunity to say, I'm just going to continue to keep learning. I'm going to continue to grow. I'm going to continue writing and reading. Why is that so important to you? Because it doesn't seem like it's like a checklist, like I want to reach this amount of success so I can say that I'm doing this. It seems like it's something that really interests you.
Well, and I would say this to any individual, any woman, and certainly any Black woman watching this, that, when you are walking in your purpose, opportunities are going to line up for you in the way that they need to allow you to do the work you're supposed to do. Yeah. The most recent book, Building Parent Capacity and Fostering Authentic Engagement with Families, that really was a person reaching out to me out of the blue, saying, we've been watching your work through Corwin Publishing, and we believe you can write a book about parents. And I said, I don't have time. This is crazy. I can't even imagine taking on something like that.
Right.
And the woman was so convincing, African-American woman that at the time worked for Corwin. Incredible story, because at the end of the conversation, I agreed to start the process. And then before you know it, I was writing the book and well into this work of really just capturing stories within Topeka and telling the Topeka story. And it's so powerful that, for others to learn from your story. By the end of the book, writing the book, once it was published, I get an email from the same person. And she says, I am so inspired about what's going on in education. I am resigning from Corwin, and I am now going to be like a chief academic officer at an inner city school. I think she's in New York. Talk about lives that intertwine and this crossroads of meeting this individual who encourages me and really leads me and selects me to write a book that later then encourages her to return to her passion and purpose. All things are meant for your good, truly.
Right.
And that was yet another opportunity of just walking in my purpose. So many of these articles, books, have really been something that the door was opened by someone or someone who feels like this needs to be shared. The most recent article as well, similar story. The American Association for School Administrators reached out again about wanting a piece on family engagement, and their entire series in January was on families. So the article was written and published. So it's not that I've had to seek out those opportunities, and sometimes we do need to say, hey, this is where I need to be. Let me seek those opportunities.
Right.
But at other times, it's really just, be very aware of who you are and where you need to go and what your gifts and passions are, and lean into that. Don't lean into the salary or the geography, but truly your purpose. And when you lean into that, opportunities will come. I guarantee it.
Right.
Your brand deserves more than just a selfie. It deserves a vision captured perfectly. Hi, I'm Danielle J. Martin, and I'm here to help you create a visual identity that creates a lasting impression. So whether you're launching a business or you're enhancing your presence or you're rebranding, your photos are your first impression. So our brand photo shoots aren't just for you to take pretty pictures, but they're for you to tell your story, build trust, and connect with your audience in a whole different way. So if you're ready to elevate your brand that creates a lasting impression, go ahead and click that link down below.
Okay, so Dr. Anderson, you talked about the opportunity around education and how I think, especially in a time like this, education's at our fingertips, right? It's like we have access everywhere. There's no reason not to have it. But I love the way you talked about just as a female and as a woman, like we have to continue educating ourselves. So it's very super important. But right now, someone would say, okay, you have everything, you've done everything, you've reached, all of the milestones. But for you, is there anything else on your list that you're like, I want to do X, Y, and Z, by this age, or what's next for you on your path to growing?
Well, the first thing is that I believe that life is a journey. I don't think that there's a destination or, man, I need to reach this, or, man, when I get to this, even within our careers, I never thought that I'd be a principal or a superintendent, but what I knew is that I wanted to impact as many people as possible with opening doors, with showing love and grace, with being a light in places that were dark, with meeting people in their sacred moments. And that has led to all kinds of opportunities. Every month or every other month, I'm speaking somewhere. This weekend, I'll be in New York speaking, and you're talking 10,000 people in an audience, just listening and learning about how schools really are the center of the community. Never did I imagine that people would be paying to come to some venue to hear me speak for an hour. Last month it was to the Methodist Church and the Women of New England, and it's been just an incredible journey. And if I had said, how do I get to speak somewhere, I probably would have approached that the wrong way. But so, for me, I really don't know what God has in store for me next. I do feel as though there's a calling for when I retire, if that happens one day, to move into chaplaincy in a formal way. And whether that happens or not, we'll see where he calls me to be. But it's been interesting being in those important moments of life, when life enters and when life moves on to everlasting life. Because we're such a large district, there are many of those moments that I find myself in, and being able to tell people you're not alone, and here's how I know that. And so that is an area. In terms of my career, again, I am always surprised at what God has in store, from the, Women's Superintendent of the Year to the Oscars to just stuff I could not have even imagined. It is truly remarkable. And for me, it is the reminder that God will place you where you were supposed to be, when you're supposed to be there. But don't look at it as a destination, but see it as truly a journey. And as I am on this journey, it has been tremendous to see the opportunities, projects, initiatives that have unfolded without me ever imagining I'd be in that space. The other piece of that for me, in terms of what's next, the equity and opportunity gap is so significant. And I believe what feeds that is ignorance and fear about young people, about Black women. I mean, I'm still one of 2 Black women in the state of Kansas. And so I will share that I continue to look at ways to educate, to dispel myths about what Black kids can't do, about who Black women are. And not that I represent all of Black women, but I certainly represent what's possible for other Black women, but for other people. In Topeka, I remember when I started, and it was like this in Virginia when I started. If I put out my hand and someone, kind of shied away, I would, reach out and say, give me a hug and give them a big kiss, to really look at approaching people in a way that you can't help but love me back. It's really hard to bring hate and anger in a space of love. And so knowing that most people approach you with whatever their makeup is. And so I seek to be a person that doesn't take that personal, because they don't know me, but seek to be a person that believes I am supposed to be in this space to help them grow in love and grace and kindness. And so whatever opportunity God has planned for me in the future is one that I know will continue to develop those skills and allow me to use those gifts and talents that he's given me.
That's so good. I think it's easy for you to showcase love and grace for people, because you mentioned it earlier that having an authentic brand starts with who you are. And I preach that consistently on this podcast, that you have to know who you are. And it's interesting because what I've learned along the way is that life is a journey that teaches you who you are. And some people really don't know where to start. So if you could also use this opportunity and maybe go back to your journey, what did that look like when it came to finding who you are, and what steps did you take to get there?
Well, it's so interesting, the people that are in your space and their impact, for good or bad. For me, my parents, who are retired pastors, that's who was in my space. And so it's incredible that when I look back at my life, my mom integrated schools in 1955 after the 1954 Brown decision, and now I'm the superintendent in the place where the Brown decision occurred.
Wow.
You talk about things being intentionally lined up.
Yeah.
If it had not been for Brown v. Board, my mom would not have integrated Soldan High School, and I would not be superintendent today.
Yeah.
So, knowing that I am a product of a family that truly believed that if they did not advocate and empower others and be part of the civil rights movement, that change would not happen. If they chose to sit out, change would not have happened. To know that I'm a product of that, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That in and of itself fuels me to say, man, I have got to have everything within me to use this as a responsibility to fight and advocate for others, to be truly part of the struggle to change and challenge and transform communities for the betterment of others.
Right.
It's part of who I am. And so, when people are in spaces where they may not have parents that give that, they certainly have friends and colleagues and other mentors, which is why it's so important to mentor other people.
Right.
They have stories all around them that they can read to see possibility. They just have to look.
Yeah.
And so if my role is really just to inspire you to look and see, man, there are a lot of high-performing schools that have all Black and brown babies in them.
Yeah.
And man, there are a lot of places that have women leading that are making changes. Sometimes their stories aren't always told. And so if I get the opportunity to tell their story, it's really incredible. So that's my parents. But then there are also many role models who are other women that have come before me, whose shoulders I stand on. Here in Topeka, nationally, through art and literature and music. Locally, Dr. Burrell New, who was the principal at Highland Park High, she and I both were featured on the 12 episode cable TV series, Undercover High. And instantly, as I met this amazing woman of grace who is now on the State Board of Education, I knew that I was supposed to learn a tremendous amount from her. And we are still co-chairs of the Equity Council and advocating for others. So many people have played a part in my story, and I am prayerful that I'm playing a part in stories that I may never know.
Yeah. And I was going to follow up with that when it comes to mentorship and the significance around that, because I think people being a part of your life, you talked about it earlier, collaboration, that like you can get further in life collaborating with others, right? And so I think it kind of reminds me of, getting mentored and the significance around mentorship. And so someone like you, some people may feel like, do you have a mentor? Where do you get your support from? Because you are the leader for so many people, but leaders need support too. And so in your world, what does mentorship look like?
And I said earlier, you have to lift as you climb. So there are so many people that are lifting us up that may be non-traditional mentors that you read about and hear about. But, daily I look to others in terms of what can I learn from people who are in education and not in education, who are in business? I remember when I became a superintendent, and while as women, we have to support and uplift one another, this role is predominantly male dominated, right? So
Yes.
as many CEO roles are. And so if I just said, man, I'm only learning from women, I don't trust men, I would have lost many opportunities. So I look for people to be mentors and for me to be mentors too.
That's good.
That are not, that don't necessarily all look like me. Right now I'm mentoring a young man at Ross Elementary, Dr. Gardner, and he has his doctorate at a very early age. And it was just a privilege for him to say, can you mentor me through this process?
Yeah.
In fact, I write about him in my book. But when I became superintendent, there was a superintendent who's now passed on, a woman and a man. Superintendent was Dr. Cleveland Hammonds. And my first superintendency, where I was the first woman and first African-American in Montgomery County, Virginia.
Yeah.
And he took the time to connect with me regularly to talk about that very first contract, the decisions that I have to make, the being business savvy. Additionally, there was a female principal, longest serving principal in St. Louis City, Juanita Doggett. I think when I started, she may have been 70, and she would invite me to her home and her school. And this whole piece of authenticity and learning what that looks like after 20, 30, 40 years of leading in this work.
Yeah.
My goodness, I learned a tremendous amount. And we can shut ourselves off when we're looking at mentorship built in a certain package.
Wow,
so
that's
being
good.
open to be mentors and to be mentored by people who may not look like you or show up in the way that you would think they would. It's been remarkable, the people that have poured into me.
That's good. You're speaking good. I'm not surprised, but okay. Last question for you as we come to a close. You are around countless students, right? Different lives, different perspectives, young, old, different races. You're around lots of people, but I think you could probably agree with me when you see the younger generation hurting when it comes to figuring out who they are and trying to find a sense of belonging. You mentioned it earlier. And so there's this strong need to be desired, to be liked, to stand out, to be known, to be, successful, right? Like this younger generation is hungry to go viral in a sense on social media. But I think there's a huge opportunity to speak to not only the younger generation, but even the older generation when it comes to developing an authentic brand. So right now, if you could go back and start over, from the beginning, what would it look like to develop an authentic brand?
Well, for me, there's not much in my life that I can look back on and say, man, I wish I had done it differently. I think that everything that has occurred in my life has been so intentionally designed for me to learn and grow and develop. And so branding for me at a very early part of my career really included my husband, my late husband. And when we talk about branding, we really talked about our family. So he would draw a diagram and say, "This is the Anderson dynasty." Now just lean into that.
I love it.
And my kids still know that, Chris and Whitney. This is the Anderson dynasty. And what does that mean to you? And having the conversation about how do you want to be known, basically. What is your legacy?
Yeah.
What do you want people to think about you when you leave a room or come into a room? And that then leads right on into what's your brand and who are you?
Yeah.
And, when we look at brands on objects and we say, man, I remember that, I know that just based on what that looks like,
Right.
or what that smells like, or what that design is. Well, we want to be known. We should want to be known and remembered for how we make people feel and what characteristics we bring to that space.
Yes.
There are people that walk in a room and sometimes you say, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're in the room. And then there are people that walk in a room and you automatically smile.
Yeah.
I mean, it just makes my heart happy. When I walk in a room, and I always walk in smiling. And so when I met with smiles or laughter or the head nod, I pray that I bring truly a light into a space that perhaps has greater glimmer or was dark and now has hope. Stan and I would call ourselves ambassadors of hope. And
That's good.
is part of the Anderson dynasty. And so now my daughter, who works in oncology, searching for the cure for cancer, found the one the one cure, or at least 99% effective treatment for the cancer her father had, which is incredible, last year at WashU Medical School. And my son, who's in digital marketing, we are ambassadors of hope and possibility. And that's part of our brand as the Anderson family. That will be the legacy that's left when we look at photos and stories and accomplishments.
Yeah.
It's part of why each of the homeless shelters and things that we've opened, I call them Hope House. Every book, including the article that was just out, has something about transforming communities or transformational leadership, or this piece of you're ever evolving into being your better self. You're on this journey, not a destination, of learning and growing and developing to be your better self. My purpose is to serve God's purpose. So it's very clear for me. And my kids and I, we talk about that. And the more we know His purpose, the more we know our purpose and what we're supposed to be. And so, and
That's good.
what we're supposed to do. So, the piece of branding is truly, for us, a conversation in our family.
Yeah.
Early on, when I met my husband, this piece of let's dream about where we think God will take us and how we see ourselves and who we want to be. So often that conversation doesn't happen with young people,
Right.
At a very early age, at elementary, at middle, at high school.
Right.
Who do you want to be? How do you see yourself? How do you want people to feel when they get a chance to meet you and they leave out of your presence? How do you want to be remembered?
Yeah.
And then having that conversation about who we are before we talk about what we're going to do.
Right. Oh my God. Yes.
That changes everything. And that really goes into brand.
Gosh, you're like building out my framework. This is exactly what I talk about all the time. But I think that people want to skip the identity piece so bad. But I think it's because the American way is, go to school, figure out what you want to do, go get a career, go get married, go have kids. And so there's like the personal development piece that gets skipped all the time. And so even for myself, I had to pause and be still and really spend time with, honestly, God, and figure out like, okay, what is your will for my life? And how do I sign up for that versus like, let me go do all the things that I want to do. And I was on that path, but it's interesting how I just got redirected back here.
But it gives you greater clarity when you focus on identity. It really does.
Yeah.
I mean, even down to understanding your name and who you are and why your parents, even just all of that, your history. I remember when I asked my mom, my name is Tiffany Chanel, and it was Brown, and my nickname is Coco. So, and I always thought when I was really little that it was because of my complexion. The rest of my mother and her side, they're very fair-skinned. And so, but that was not at all the case. My mother named me after the finest diamond. She was a buyer in New York, worked at Tiffany's, and Coco Chanel was the perfume and one of the designers that she had the opportunity to be involved and engaged with. And so this story of leaving a fragrance in a space that people will remember was the piece of that Coco Chanel. So that's the only perfume I wear now.
Yeah.
Was part of where that name came from.
Wow.
I mean, I just found that powerful for me to say, my mother saw in me something that she wants me to see in myself, that you are good enough because God made you and placed you here.
Yeah.
So that same conversation about identity and who are you, and the individuals that gave you the opportunities that you have, your parents or the boss that gave you the job that you have, what did they see in you? And I pray that you see that in yourself. And if you don't, how can I help you develop that?
That's good.
So that your better self continues to grow and develop on this, life journey.
Yeah.
It is an incredible opportunity to be able to walk alongside leaders and future leaders and young people who are just figuring out who they are.
Yeah.
We start the year in Topeka Public Schools with What's Your Why, even with kindergarten.
Ooh.
It's really great.
That's amazing. In kindergarten. What is your why?
What's your why?
Yeah.
And beginning that conversation, who are you? Even at a kindergarten level.
Yeah. That's beautiful. That's powerful.
It really is. Dr. New, who was my co-partner for the Methodist Women of New England last month in that speaking space, and that was a retreat for a few days. And we started with Silhouette Sisters and having these silhouettes and really the conversation to these pastors about who are you and all the aspects of what guides you and leads you and brings you into ministry. So even, pastors in this space of really figuring out who am I when challenge comes. And the more that you know that, the more that you know identity, the stronger and firmer you will be when challenge does come. The stronger and firmer you will be with being able to make decisions quickly without questioning the decision that you make.
Yeah.
That it's an important piece. And you're right, people do often skip over that and they want to be what people tell them they should be.
Yeah.
Or the job they feel like
they should have.
Gives them value, not knowing you already have value because who you are.
Exactly.
I tell people how you start your day and in your day is really important. Mm-hmm. And even physiologically, when you think about how people are built up, because some people aren't as sure about who they are just because they haven't learned ways to have that kind of balance. And so I start with joy and I teach people how to start with peace and joy. They're the beginning of their day and the end of their day. Many people start with emails and other kinds of busy things to start your day.
Right.
The first hour of my day and the last hour of my day. And if it can't be the full hour, certainly at least 30 minutes. And I encourage anyone listening to think of how they begin and end and bookend that day.
Yeah.
If it's not filled with peace and joy, change how you start your day and end your day, and you will change how you feel about self and what's ahead of you and what you've accomplished that day. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Well, if people want to learn more about Dr. Anderson and all her books and articles, we are going to drop all of that information down below. In the meantime, Dr. Anderson, it's always a pleasure talking with you. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching the Authentic Media Podcast YouTube. At Authentic Media Company, our mission is to help you develop an authentic brand so you can make the impact that you are called to make. If you got anything from today's episode, make sure you drop a comment down below. I'm interested to see what your takeaways are. And if you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel so you can be the first to know when we drop our newest episode. In the meantime, have a great day.